Hi, you're listening to the Crime Cafe, and this is Debbie Mack, your host. This is the place to be on the internet. You want to hear from some of the best suspense, crime fiction, and thriller authors out there. And just a quick word before I introduce my guest. I would like to mention that the Crime Cafe Season 1 story package is available for 99 cents on my website. That's debbiemac.com or crimecafe.net. Either one. Just click on Crime Cafe and you can find the package for 99 cents. And that includes stories from all the authors I interview here at the Crime Cafe. You can also find Crime Cafe merchandise. But now that's out of the way, I'd like to introduce a DC area writer, Austin Camacho, who has written a mystery series featuring a badass protagonist, Hannibal Jones. Welcome to the show, Austin.
Well, thank you, Debbie. I'm really happy to be here with you.
Well, it's great to have you. And tell us about Hannibal Jones. Who is he and what makes him tick?
Well, Hannibal Jones has evolved a little bit over time. When I started the series, it grew out of the simple mind process of, okay, I love reading about Sam Spade and Philip Marlowe and Lou Archer. What if you had the same character today and he was black? That explained his character for me. He's a little bit of a throwback to the past, trying to exist in today's modern world, and he's one of those very stubborn types of people who always wants to get at the truth, and that drives him in his quest. But of course, being an African-American, Washington, D.C., he has some different challenges from some of the things that those earlier private eyes had to work with. I've had a lot of fun dealing with the social side of those books.
I can imagine. Are you, influenced or inspired at all by the writings of somebody like Chester Himes or trying to think of Walter Mosley, perhaps?
Well, less Mosley than Himes. But yeah, there have been just 2 or 3 mystery writers, black mystery writers who have done great work, and I have admired them. Who can I point at? Like I said, not so much Walter Mosley, but if you know who Coffin Ed Johnson and Gravedigger Jones are, of my early reading. And but beyond that, I think I was inspired more by Ross MacDonald's Lou Archer, because I needed to get at that character who had his own personal morality, which I think is the essence of hard-boiled detective fiction, had his own personal morality and was kind of an outsider to both worlds. And maybe that's the piece that I'm looking at that my predecessors did not. Hannibal Jones is, in fact, of mixed race, and he's not completely comfortable in either world, in that black culture that is so strong and prevalent, especially in the inner city and in Washington and other big cities, but also in the general American culture. He's a fish out of water no matter where he goes, and I think that makes him a little different from all those who came before.
I like that. Ross MacDonald is one of my favorite hard-boiled writers, and truly has been an influence on me. So I'm kind of happy to hear other people say that too, because you don't hear his name nearly enough. You hear Raymond Chandler all the time, but Ross MacDonald is one of those writers that I just adore.
Well, I'm happy to share just a few seconds of my personal opinion. I happen to think that Ray Chandler's prose was better than anybody who has ever written in the field, but Ross MacDonald wrote, in my personal humble opinion, stronger plots, better stories, and they were all completely character driven. They're just great storytelling. And when I sit down at the typewriter, that's the guy I'm chasing. That's who I'm going after.
That's cool. So the Pyramid Deception is the 6th Hannibal Jones novel, correct?
Roger.
And what is it about?
Well, grew out of again, a simple concept, as they always do. Hannibal Jones has a steady girl through all the series, and she, Cindy, is swindled, caught in a Ponzi scheme, one of those pyramid plans, and he has to deal with dealing with her as a client as well as being his woman. And in trying to get recover her money, he follows a trail, of course, finds a woman who apparently knows something. It turns out that she is, in fact, married to the guy who swindled Cindy. And while he is interviewing her, she is gunned down in a drive-by shooting right in front of him. Mm-mm. And so he has a double motivation, A, to solve this murder, because, that's kind of insulting to us private eye types, and also to try to recover the money. And, of course, it's a mystery. I can't tell you too much. I can't give much away. Mm-hmm. But in that process of trying to, A, find the swindler, and B, find the murderer, of course, the murderer is always killing a couple more people in order to cover their trail better. And he's involved in a way because the police don't even believe there was a murder. He goes chasing after the shooter, and when he gets back, the body's gone, the mess is cleaned up. It's easier for the police to believe that this wealthy guy's wife ran off with somebody. And so for a good chunk of the book, it's Hannibal against the world, against the police, against the bad guys. It's a really fun ride if you enjoy that kind of a story. And of course, there are the clues to collect, and in the end, you find that you should have been able to figure it out all along, which is the kind of try to do these.
Those are the best kind.
All the clues I always play fair.
Exactly. I like that. If your series were to be made into a movie, who would you want to play Hannibal?
Do you watch the show Criminal Minds?
I've never seen it.
Oh, really? Okay. There's an actor on that show named Shamar Moore. Mm-hmm. Shamar Moore, he's a little over 6 feet tall. He is a black dad, white mom, blue eyes. He is the guy that I pictured when I started writing Hannibal. And on the show, he is the man of action. He's the guy that does all the fighting and stuff. And he is most assuredly the actor that I would want. So look up Shamar Moore.
Shamar. Will do.
Because that's Hannibal. In fact, I sent him off the books and said, if you ever need a new franchise, you get tired of that TV show, I got it for you right here.
Wow. You've also written an adventure series with 2 protagonists, I believe?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you tell us a little about those books?
Morgan Stark is an African-American mercenary soldier, and Felicity O'Brien is an Irish jewel thief. They are doing their separate underworld kind of thing, and they each get double-crossed. They find out they were double-crossed by the same guy and go after him for revenge. And that's the first book, the payback assignment. After they get their revenge and they realize that they really kind of like working together, mm-hmm. They form a security company, a personal security company, and their adventures take off from there because they have connections in the underworld, they have connections in the military, they have connections with the intelligence community because Hannibal, of course, was in Delta Force. And, they get involved with some pretty crazy stuff. And I do have to tell you one other thing about them. They discover that they have a psychic connection so that the one always knows when the other is in danger. So there's a little bit of a paranormal element to their stories as well.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like a really great premise. I've got to start reading those books.
I just finished the next one and sent it off I just got it back from the editors, did the editing, and just now sent it to the proofreaders. So it should be along in the summertime. But it's very different from writing the Hannibal Jones books. As I'm sure you can guess from the people I referred to as my favorites, the Hannibal novels all by themselves tend to get dark. And as I've written them, they have gotten darker and darker. The Stark and O'Brien things, on the other hand, are much lighter fare. It's much more like reading an Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of action. A little bit more of a suspension of disbelief is called for. They're not quite as realistic, but a lot of fun.
Well, that's the whole idea, I think, behind a book like that. And they do sound like fun. What about the novel Beyond Blue, the private eye agency for police officers, as I understand it?
That was a departure.
Yeah, very interesting concept.
I made friends with the late Warren Murphy, the guy who had created the Destroyer series.
Mm-hmm.
And in conversation, he actually came up with the basic premise. Okay, a private eye agency that only takes cases to help policemen who are in trouble. And this all grew out of a wealthy Middle Eastern man who was able to actually see a policeman save his son's life as his son was trying to escape when the Twin Towers were bombed. So he funds and finances this agency. And Warren and I batted this around, and he said, "Why don't you go ahead and write it?" I said, "Okay." And I cooked up a rather diverse collection of detectives and was able to send them off on 4 different cases, because detective agencies don't just work on one thing at a time. But of course, over time, the cases overlap and intersect in what I think is a fun way. What I found out is that by doing this, it put me in the position to literally end every chapter with a cliffhanger, because then I would jump to what one of the other detectives was doing. That was a great fun writing exercise, and I think the people that I came up with are real fun too, and I do need to write another one at some point, but I have people yelling at me about the other 2 series. So
yeah. It's hard enough to do 2 series, let alone trying to sustain 3.
Keeps me going.
Yeah, what can I say? You've also started your own publishing company. How do you manage to keep writing and publishing your books and others?
Let me just say it's not easy, and I'm not writing nearly as much as I used to, because I'm finding myself becoming very invested in other people's work. You know that feeling you get when you get to the end of writing a book and you look back and you say, "Wow, that's some pretty good stuff." That's one good feeling. But oh my gosh, when you read something and you get to the end and you say, "Wow, this book blew me away. Why hasn't this guy already been published 9 times?" you get really wrapped up in those other books, and I really do. And then, of course, because I have A, because I have a writer's ego, and B, I am the editorial director of this little 3-person company. I take their book and I say, this is really good, but it could be great. And so I have the opportunity to work with those writers to ramp up their stuff and polish and edit and create something cool. And that's a very rewarding thing. Very rewarding thing. And I'm always hunting for the next. Well, I'm not looking for the next James Patterson. I think I'm looking for the next Debbie Mack.
Hopefully, they'll do as well as James Patterson.
Let's you and me tacitly agree that. If you lined up all the writers in the world by how much money they make or how many books they sell, that line doesn't look at all like the line if you lined it up by best writer down to not best.
I'll tell you, that's the God's honest truth. There are a few exceptions, but it's amazing. That's the thing. It's amazing how many truly talented authors are out there that people just don't know about. And, yeah. You were also in the Army for a while, so I assume that your experiences with the military have helped inspired a lot of your writing. Can you talk about that?
For the Stark and O'Brien stuff, it has. Yes, I was in the Army. I went in as a small arms repairer in a maintenance unit. And then at the end of my first enlistment, I took a test, and they said, hey, this isn't where you belong. What would you like to do? And I looked at every job they had in the military, and I said, gee, what's this one? Broadcast journalist. That sounds like fun. So I went to another course. It's a 3-month school, and that's what I did for the rest of my military career. I was a broadcaster. And when I got out of the military, I went to work for DOD as a civilian, and stayed in the communications field. I don't do a lot of broadcast now, but I still write a lot of articles, and I supervise a bunch of really, really talented folks who are communicating the very complicated military medical benefits to our beneficiaries. But in the meanwhile, in the earlier part of my military career, I spent enough time in the field and became familiar with weapons and that kind of stuff. And a lot of that informs the Morgan Stark character, who is, yes, of course, pushing the edge of how good a soldier can be, but he also has the soldier's mentality and the soldier's attitude about things. And I have been told that he represents military guys pretty well.
You were in Israel during Desert Storm. That must have been a pretty intense time.
As a matter of fact, I was. Wow, you did your research.
Yes, I did.
Let me as a broadcast journalist, I carried a rifle, but I never fired it at anybody. But I was, during that time in Desert Storm, we were following a Patriot missile team, and we were very, proud of those guys because they were shooting down those Scud missiles, which can't be an easy thing. And I would say that in retrospect, the most exciting moment of my life was being in the camp during an actual Scud attack. I mean, I'm looking up and I'm seeing missiles. And the funny thing is that when you're looking through a video camera viewfinder, it's your head acts as if you're watching TV. And I'm videotaping this marvelous display going on in the sky, these missiles coming in and missiles going up and hitting each other and exploding. And it wasn't until after the fact I've got the video down and I'm ready to send it back to headquarters, and it suddenly occurred to me and my partner, because there were two of us there, we could have just been blown up. We could have been, one of those missiles could have gotten through, and we could be fused with the sand here under our feet. And he said something like, "Yeah, ain't it cool?" Those intense experiences are things that you call upon when you're writing about people who are having intense experiences. You have to be in touch with, well, what's the emotional response to these things? And I am able to reach back and call on some of that from time to time, and hopefully that gives a little extra verisimilitude to my work.
I would think so. I think experience, as much as anything else, is important for a writer.
I agree. I find that when I look into those people that I really, really admire their writing, I really admire their work, I usually find out that they've had a dozen jobs.
Mm-hmm.
They've been the garbage man, and they've done sales work, and they've done retail, and they worked in McDonald's or whatever, but a broader experience does seem to help.
I would agree, definitely. My father was a writer, actually, and every time I had a crappy job, he used to say, "It'll all go into your writing." It'll all make you part of being a better writer.
Has that turned out to be true? I know you've got a pretty good detective there, but a lot of the other characters that wander in and out of your books get pretty interesting. So I'm thinking maybe that has helped.
That might have something to do with it, yeah.
Yeah.
Could very well be. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add before we close out here?
Well, I want to waste about a minute and give a commercial for my writing.
Absolutely.
And, not for my publishing company, but although the company that I'm owner of, Intrigue Publishing, also runs an annual conference. Next year, it's going to be September 30th, October 1st and 2nd. It's always a 3-day conference. It's going to be in Columbia, Maryland. And what we do is kind of a shrunk-down VoucherCon. It's called Creatures, Crime, and Creativity Con, because we've broadened it as far as genre. We're just looking for genre fiction. We have people there from horror, suspense, mystery, thriller, sci-fi, fantasy, paranormal, and we all get together and we have 3 days of panels and 3 days of eating together, because meals are included in the registration, so we all eat together for the 3 days. And anybody who is an avid reader should come there and meet a bunch of good writers. And, of course, if you're a writer, you want to come there, too, and do some networking and learn something. Next year's conference, we have Alexandra Sokoloff as going to be one of our keynote speakers. And she writes amazing paranormal detective stuff. She is a multi-genre person. We're also going to have Cerise Murphy, who is a local science fiction writer, and Donna Andrews, who is a local mystery writer, kind of a cozy, humorous mystery writer. So we'll have lots of variety there. And like I said, Creatures, Crimes, and Creativity is going to be in your neighborhood in Columbia. And I'm going to say everybody who really loves to read and everybody who really loves to write, check us out and register, and let's have a good time next year.
Well, you can count on me being there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Actually, there are a lot of mighty good writers living in this area, and it's good to just get together and hang out with a bunch of writers, if nothing else. I just love the fellowship of other authors.
Me too. That's why these conferences are fun. Meeting the readers and hanging out with the other authors that you really never get to see any other time.
And ask those questions that you never get a chance to ask. Where'd you come up with that idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am so glad that you were able to do this interview today, Austin. This was great. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your taking the time to be interviewed. And again, I would like to remind everybody that you can get the Crime Cafe Season 1 story package from my website, debbiemac.com or crimecafe.net. And you can also get Crime Cafe merchandise there, like t-shirts, coffee cups, all sorts of stuff with the Crime Cafe logo on it. So again, thank you so much, Austin. I appreciate your being on, and I'll talk to everybody in 2 weeks.